Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce London chapter's second event of the year, Starting Your Own Business, The Secrets to Success. It's our pleasure to have you join us today to discuss some hopefully useful insights to help you with your business journey. I'll start off by kind of going through who we are and why we are hosting this event. So firstly, who is the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce? We are a non-profit organisation funded by the generous support of the Punjabi community, and we are dedicated to uniting and helping our Punjabi community globally. We were founded in 2017 by members in New York and New Jersey, and we've grown to over 15 chapters globally since, and that includes London, Australia, Dubai, various areas in North America, and also in India. We have a strict no religion, no politics policy in place. And since our inception, we've helped entrepreneurs grow their businesses, professionals lead their organizations, and community leaders expand their reach. Our members come from a variety of backgrounds, ranging from all sectors and industries, from large corporates to SMEs and entrepreneurs located all across the globe. So why this event? I actually read a stat recently that said over 64% of the UK workforce wants to set up a business, and that figure has grown exponentially since lockdown. So we really felt that this was an opportune time to hear from an expert in this field. And that's why we're honoured to introduce Rohit Nanda. If we just go to the next slide, we'll see that he has a wealth of experience in this space. He's an SME and family business advisor, a fintech consultant, and he's worked in a number of different sized businesses across a range of sectors, including banking, fintech, food, manufacturing, and engineering globally. These businesses have ranged from multinationals such as UBS, Nomura, and GE Capital, all the way through to startups and SMEs. In 2018, he did what many of us dream of doing and left the corporate world to set up his own business, Growth Consultancy. He's also run a number of startups and understands the challenges that founders go through when taking on those first steps in business. So to support these early stage entrepreneurs, Rohit is in the process of setting up Escape the Corporate, which is a membership program we'll provide a link to later in the event. He has numerous awards and media appearances to his credit, and he's passionate about business, fintech, family businesses, and encouraging entrepreneurship. He's also a visiting lecturer in business studies at the Riga Graduate School of Law. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand over to Rohit. Rohit, it's great to have you.
Thank you very much, Haz, and pleasure to be here. Sorry, I'm just my screen has disappeared for some reason, but hey, I'm here now. So thank you for that introduction. And yeah, you listen to that slide and you go, my goodness, did I do all of those things? So what I thought would be quite useful is to spend a little time, if you like, going through some of my story. You will be delighted to know not the entire motion length picture feature, but an abridged version of what I've done, where I've been, but also what I've picked up on that journey. So let me rewind to my earlier days, if you like. So I was born in the UK, and about 7 or 8 years old, I moved to the Middle East, and I was in Saudi Arabia. And my parents both ran their own businesses. This is important, and I'll come back to this later. But they both had their own respective businesses in the automotive sector and in the schooling sector. I, as a kid, spent a lot of time at my parents' businesses because I guess that's what people do. And for those of you who are in family businesses, you'll know what that's like. I came back to the UK. I went to boarding school over here while my parents were still there. And every holiday I would go back to the Middle East to spend time with the family, but also to work in the family businesses that were there. So I guess you could say I started working in startups from the age of 13 or 14, although obviously I wasn't paid to do any of this. I came back to the UK and I did my engineering undergraduate. Couldn't find a job in the UK because there was a recession going on. It was quite some time ago. But I did manage to get a job in India. So I went over to India and I worked in Delhi for a large Indian pharmaceutical company. And I worked in their design engineering space, which as a mechanical engineer was kind of a really exciting place to be. Designed 5 or 6 machines in the 6 months I was there. But India was always, if you like, a stepping stone on my journey. And I went back to the Middle East to see my parents on my way back to the UK and managed to land a job in Saudi Arabia. So I worked for 3 years in Saudi in sales and marketing for a Saudi startup who were manufacturing injection molds and blow molds for the plastics industry over there. And again, back in those days, there was no internet. So we were making things up on the fly. We didn't have directories. I was driving around industrial estates, finding clients, knocking on doors, introducing myself, just to see who would be interested in the things that we were offering. And again, all of these stories, the reason I'm telling you these stories will become apparent as I get towards the end of my description, I guess. I came back to the UK. I did an MBA. I decided it was time to return to the UK. The business that I was in Saudi were doing really well. I was head of sales at the time, and they told me in March that you need to stop selling because we've already sold out the rest of the year. We're building a new factory, so you need to stop selling. And the thing you don't understand is when you are building something from zero and you suddenly have a whole host of sales appearing, it's very hard to stop that boulder rolling down the hill. So I said, well, at this point in time, it's a good idea. If we don't have the capacity to fulfill these orders, it's time for me to return to the UK and do a master's, which was always on my roadmap. So I came back and did an MBA at City University in London in international business. And again, meeting a lot of people from all over the globe, exploring. And for those of you who've done an MBA, you'll know what it's like. It's not about the theory, but it's about learning from people's experiences and what they're all going through and what they've all been through. On leaving the MBA, I was fortunate enough to get a role with GE Capital, as was mentioned earlier. I was there for 3 months. I did my dissertation with them on process re-engineering. At that time, GE was very big on Six Sigma. So Jack Welch was still running the company in those days, and I joined the GE quality team. So we were tasked with going into various areas of the business and improving business processes. So in the 3 months I was there, I was trained up to what they call a black belt. So no, it wasn't a karate move, but it was more about knowing the skills that you need in order to diagnose what's going on in the process, measuring, because measurement was a key component of that process, and then making improvements to the overall process and then remeasuring again so you could actually measure the improvement that you had made in a particular process. And I was fortunate to get that role, like I said. And from that, it opened up, if you like, the world of investment banking. Because after that, I was fortunate to get a job at Nomura. This is year 2000. 2000, the dot-com boom was underway. I joined the e-commerce team. We were going to take over the world. Everything was going online and everything was going digital until the bubble burst a few years later. I quickly moved into technology. We were absorbed by technology. I spent a few more years at Nomura before. I am someone who likes to make things very efficient and make things work in a very orderly manner. So I have to do as little manual work as possible. So the idea was I made things so efficient that when it came to leaving, I got bored and I said, it's time for me to leave. And I went to UBS for an 18-month diversion before returning to Nomura in 2008. For those of you who will remember 2008, it was the year of subprime. It was the year of financial crises. I was in a fortunate position to be working at Nomura, who had survived and navigated the financial crisis. And in a way, as a result of our success in navigating this, we ended up purchasing Lehman Brothers, the bank that had gone bust earlier in that year. And I was then involved in almost a reverse takeover where we were absorbing ex-Lehman staff into Nomura, putting them into our business and then reshaping the business around these people. and then letting go of a lot of the Nomura people. I tell you this again because, again, I was thrown in at the deep end, if you like, in terms of what are you going to go and do next. They asked me to come and look at some sales processes. So I went and did that for a while. I then worked on a technology initiative. And then I left, and I was kind of at that point thinking, okay, maybe now is my time to go freelance, start something myself, because I've got the experience. I have all this knowledge and information. And I went and became a project manager for a large UK retail chain. For those of you in the UK, it was the owners of Argos and Homebase, so a DIY store. So selling all sorts of hardware and equipment. And I worked there for 6 months as a project manager in their e-commerce team before I was approached by a trader of mine from Nomura days who essentially was starting a fintech, but he had no idea how to start a fintech. He had an idea, he had a vision, but he didn't know what to do next and he couldn't operationalize it. So he got in touch with me to see whether I would be interested in returning to London. At that time, I was working up in Milton Keynes. I live in Surrey, so it was quite a commute. So I looked at that, and for 6 years, we built this startup in the city of London. We built a trading platform from scratch, and I'm more than happy to talk about that in a bit more detail. But the whole point there was I had a greenfield site. We were fortunate that we raised some funding from friends and family. So we had enough money. We had an office in the city. We had a team of 5 or 6 of us, and we were there and we built the technology, we scoped it, and we went live with this new product. And we were spending a lot of time educating the market in an auction-based system. So coming back to what I said earlier about one of my flaws, I guess, is I'm inherently lazy, so I like to make things as efficient as possible. And so what happened with my time at Asset Match, the fintech, was I had made my role almost too easy. I was kind of navigating and running the business with one finger. I was the COO, I wasn't the CEO, but I was the COO, but I had my hands in every single item and every single area of the business. But I wasn't finding the challenge anymore, and I wasn't finding the drive or the desire to turn up every day and repeat, because there was nothing there that was mentally challenging me or stimulating me. So while I left in 2018 or 2019, as it turned out, I began to question what I was doing around 2017, I guess. I started working with a coach, because the challenge, as I've already described to you, the challenge I had was I had so much experience from all sorts of parts of the world, from all sorts of industry sectors, from all sorts of businesses. I knew I wanted to go and do something different, and I wanted to start something up myself, but I had no idea what I was going to do and where I was going to go. And so this kind of, I guess, comes into one of the first things is, for anybody who's thinking of starting a business, find out what is your big idea. Find out what it is that lights you up, what wakes you up in the morning, what do you jump out of bed screaming that you want to go and do. And if you can find that, you're already halfway on that journey. Because trust me, running a business isn't as easy or as glamorous as many people might make out it to be. Okay. So I worked with this coach. I came up with a wish list of, 20, 25 different projects that I could have done. They're still in my notebook somewhere, so I can dig them out from time to time. But one of the areas that I wanted to focus on, if you like, was there's a gap in knowledge and expertise in people, who support the small and medium-sized business community. There's a lot of experience at multinational level. They've got the money, they can hire in the consultants, and they can help them, and they may have internal teams to help them, like I was at GE, help them move their direction and help them become more efficient. And on the startup side, they're probably too small, but there is a lot of support around early stage businesses. But what happens when you move from an early stage business to a more established business? And for me, there was a gap. And I thought, okay, well, there's a gap there that I think with my background and expertise, I can help plug a hole here and support businesses, because we recognize that the vast majority of businesses, certainly in the UK, but probably across the world, are small or medium-sized businesses. So they support the local community. They hire people from the local community. Those people spend money in the local community. So by working with these local businesses and these small businesses and medium-sized businesses, you are actually supporting the local community and you're supporting their growth and their development. So I fast forward a few years, I guess I left Asset Match, my fintech trading platform, on very good terms. I'm still a shareholder. I still have options in the business, and I'm still there on call should they need me. But I went off and started my consultancy called The Business Troubleshooter. So I started that, if you like, full-time September 2019. And we all know what happened in March 2020 with a global pandemic. Now, one of the other things that I was going to talk about around business ideas is write things down, come up with a plan. And I'm not talking about coming up with an exhaustive war and peace type novel that no one will actually look at and you will certainly never look at again in your time. I'm talking about a document that essentially captures what it is that you're trying to do with your business, what you're trying to do, and what your vision is for the business before you've even started doing it. Because actually there are a lot of ideas that you'll come up with before you've even started that if you keep and have them noted down on paper, you can revisit once you have actually started the business. So certainly on my plan, if you like, there was no global pandemic mentioned in the plan. However, one of the things that you learn very quickly when you're running your own business is you're in control of your own destiny. And so you have to respond to whatever the circumstances are and whatever is thrown at you. So very quickly, obviously, we're using Zoom at the moment, and you are all probably very familiar now with using Zoom technology or Teams or Google Meet or whatever it is. And we've shown that we can actually work effectively through this medium. So we don't necessarily need to be face-to-face anymore. And so what that's done for my troubleshooter business is meant that I can now reach more clients around the world and support businesses globally, which I certainly hadn't thought about doing initially, because my initial business plan was all around working with businesses in around London and the Southeast where I was based, working with them on a one-to-one basis, bringing them together for group work and to focus on ideas and brainstorming to help move people forward. So again, opportunities arise through various avenues, and the pandemic certainly, while it's been tough in certain elements and in certain industries have certainly been traumatized by this pandemic, there have been opportunities that have arisen as a result of leveraging the technology that's out there. So my troubleshooter business is still going. I'm working with clients. As I said, I've got clients I'm fortunate, I guess, I've got clients in Africa, in the Middle East, in the UK, and I've got a few in the US that I'm talking to at the moment. So I have a global consultancy, which is great. And I probably didn't have that on my roadmap when we wrote down the plan again. At the same time, one of the things that I became very conscious of is, as you'll have heard from my experience, I'm very much into processes and systems. I'm an ex-engineer. I break problems down into their smallest component parts. And once things are in small component parts, you can fix things much more easily. And that's how my mind works. So when someone presents a problem, a challenge, I break it down to its smallest component. And I'll then say, well, why don't we fix this? Why can't we try this? Is there something we can do here? So in doing that, I identified something through a conversation with a friend who kind of went, well, you're building this business and you're supporting these business owners, and you came out initially thinking that you're going to help them with processes and improvements to systems and all of these things. But ironically, the place where you actually need to start working with business owners is working on them and working with them to get them out of their own way. Because until you get them out of their own way, they can't actually move their business forward. So that became something that I learned very quickly. And obviously, I now spend a lot of time working with clients on themselves. How are they spending their day, especially if it's a single owner or a CEO that I'm working with? They may have a team of 15 to 20 people, but you'll be surprised by how many things that CEO is trying to do. Yeah, and what energy and time they're spending. And because they've got no one to bounce these ideas off, they just believe that that was the way that we started the business. So this is the way that it will continue. So that's another learning. It's find other people within your organization, if you have them, that you can delegate to, But if you don't have people and you're starting from scratch, there are plenty of people you can outsource things to, right? So in my fintech world, we had outsourced accountants, outsourced lawyers, outsourced compliance people. We outsourced everything that wasn't core to our business. So that's another thing to maybe think about. But in doing that work with these CEOs of businesses that were turning over multi-million pounds, shall we say, it was clear to me that there was another gap that was not being addressed. And that was the support of the entrepreneur as they grow their business. So as Has mentioned, I created, or I'm creating a membership program called Escape the Corporate. Escape the Corporate summarizes my life, if you like. I have tried to leave and then got sucked back in, tried to leave and got sucked back in. But this time I believe I'm out. I was actually told by a friend of mine who's a very senior partner at KPMG that, Rohit, you're no longer employable because you're too much like an entrepreneur. And for me, I take that as a compliment. Yeah. So Escape the Corporate, again, is helping people on their journey when they're starting a business. So it's there to support you, not with business plans and marketing plans and how to write a pitch deck and how to get funding and how to form your company and whether it's limited or sole trader and how you do all of those things and opening a bank account. All of that stuff is there. I promise you it's there. But that kind of stuff is more what I call the hard stuff. But what Escape the Corporate is more about is about creating a community of entrepreneurs who will support each other, who will lift people up. Because one of the things you need as an entrepreneur is resilience. You need to be able to bounce back. You need to be able to motivate yourself in the morning, because at the end of the day, the business that you're working in is your business. So who is going to pick you up in the morning when you're not feeling it? When you work for somebody, you can go in and work at 50% or at 60% capacity. And maybe someone will notice and maybe they won't. And trust me, in some of the businesses I was in, nobody would have noticed that. So, but when you're running your own business, you have that additional pressure because you are essentially, you are in charge of your own destiny. I was on a call with a client this morning who recognized that, and it was our kickoff call this morning, they recognized that they had a problem with lead generation and finding prospects. And I said, okay, so what exactly are you doing about lead generation and finding prospects? And they went, and that's the problem. We haven't done anything. So for them, it was about, okay, well, let's start writing you out a roadmap that you need to follow, but you have to follow it diligently. And to form habits takes time. A habit doesn't form by doing it once. Yeah, a habit forms by doing things repetitively for a number of weeks, and then it becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes less of a chore. So that was another learning. So along the way, if you like, Escape the Corporate is about supporting you with mindset, it's supporting you with persistence, resilience, having that safe space where you can bounce ideas across. One of the things I noticed with the entrepreneurs I work with in my business troubleshooter hat is that they don't have anybody they speak to. They don't speak to anybody in the team. They don't want to speak to their friends about it because their friends are all employed and they don't understand. They don't want to speak to their family because they don't want to put pressure on the family, or also the family don't understand. Sometimes your family can say that they support you in your entrepreneurial endeavors, but actually secretly they kind of don't. They actually would much rather you be safe. And in their mind, safe means working as an employee somewhere. Now, obviously, I've broken through all of those molds and I've broken through all those stereotypes. And I'm certainly very passionate about this whole space. And, you know, the COVID situation, as we touched on earlier, has been an opportunity for some people. You know, I remember sitting on the 6 o'clock train in the morning heading into the city of London, being the only person who was smiling because I had worked out in my mind that this wasn't what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. But I looked around the carriage and everybody else, however, wasn't smiling. And that was because they're on that treadmill. I was on that treadmill for a while as well until I kind of saw my light, if you like, and found my purpose. But you have to work out what's important to you and when the time is right. Yeah, because it comes down to you and your experience, and there will come a moment, it certainly happened to me, where you just felt there was an itch that needed to be scratched. And COVID for many, if you like, will have been that itch, because actually a lot of people will have now started to work from home and have forced to work from home, and they will suddenly realize that actually there is more to life than getting the train in and commuting and doing the rat race and dealing with the politics. And actually you can have work-life balance and you can have all these things. So there is, I think you're absolutely right. I think there are a whole wave. I mean, there's huge stats around the number of people who look to start businesses anyway. But I think if anything, the pandemic has maybe fast forwarded some of those thoughts and given people certainly more idea and capacity to do that. So that's kind of, I guess, my journey, if you like, in that sense. Some of the other points that I kind of just wanted to summarize before we go into, I guess, a bit of Q&A is, as I said, work out what your big idea is. So what can you do? What lights you up? What excites you? Yeah. What could you do better than anybody else? Yeah. And often it doesn't have to be completely different to anybody else. It just has to be done better than anybody else. And we all neglect how important customer service is. And you'd be surprised by the organizations I've worked with, how poor they are at customer service. Could you start a business on the side? People call that a side hustle, for example. Could you start something, test the water out, and just see if something happens? And some of the people I've spoken to about escape the corporate are people who are running businesses as a hobby alongside, either they're at home or they have their other business and they're doing things at the weekend. So could you start something as a side hustle? What's your focus like? What's your resilience like? And what are you like persistently, in terms of, are you going to be able to drag yourself out of bed on the day when everyone has said no to you? And trust me, that will happen. That comes with the territory, right? But when they say yes to you, just imagine what that feels like and how motivating and how supercharged you feel at that point in time. When you make your first sale, trust me, when you make your own first sale, it's absolutely fantastic. Other things to think about: surround yourself with positivity. Find like-minded people, find other entrepreneurs. Other entrepreneurs are a great source of inspiration, but they also understand the journey that you're on, and they're going through a similar journey. So that's another piece. That's another tip. I go back to planning. I'm an ex-project manager in a previous life, as I mentioned. So a plan is important, but I wouldn't say spend all your time writing a plan. I talk to people about writing a one-page plan. A one-page plan that can encapsulate what your key thoughts, what your key ideas are, what your marketplace is, how you're going to service that market, what are you going to do, and how are you going to go and do it. And the great thing with a one-page plan is that you can then revisit it and you can look at it. And a plan is a living document in my mind. Okay, it's not meant to be only looking at what's happened in the past. You can actually iterate and move forward with it. So as you try different things, and this leads on to my next point, try things out, iterate. As you launch your business, you will discover things that will come out of the woodwork or come out of nowhere, left field, as they say, that you suddenly go, I never thought of doing that. Why can't I do that? I could do that. So why don't I go and do that, right? A bit like me and my global consultancy now. And the fact that I can work with anybody anywhere in the world because I don't actually have to physically be in your location. I understand business. I don't need to understand you and your country and your sector. That's your area of specialism, okay? There are going to be times when you're going to try things and they flop, right? People have done launches. I've done launches where no one has signed up. That happens. So there's an expression, fail and fail fast, right? So we don't set out to fail, but if we do fail, let's get it out of the way and let's get back on the horse, let's get back on the bike, and let's get going again, because actually that will hold us back if we don't want to do that. And those are some of the things that you need to be thinking about. If you're thinking about starting a business, look at yourself seriously in the mirror, right? Look at yourself and ask yourself those questions, because it's not as easy as people say it is. The other things obviously are around fundraising, and we can talk about that, and I've got experience of that. I guess the final point before I hand back is I also have a startup business that I started with my wife over 10 years ago, 11 years ago, a food business, which we've been running successfully on the side, if you like, while I've been working in the city. She's been running a cookery school and a business on the side. So as I said, the experience of running businesses in different sectors and working out how to, her food business, for example, we had to iterate very quickly as a result of the pandemic when there were no markets and no farmers markets to go to. So what do you do? So we created a home delivery service and delivery option, so people buy online in advance and pick up. And that kind of saved us, if you like, on that journey. So again, entrepreneurs never stop thinking, and that's probably something I'm sure if my wife was sitting next to me, she would be saying that I don't stop. I'm sitting there reading something and suddenly go, why couldn't I do that? Why can't you try that? So those are just some of my thoughts there, and I'll hand back to Has. Hopefully that was all made sense.
Thank you so much, Rohit. It definitely did. And it was very insightful to hear about not just your experience as an advisor, but also your personal experiences. I definitely think most of us would like to be those smiling people on the train carriage. I'm sure many of us have questions for you. I know I personally do. So I would encourage everybody to use the chat box to put in your questions, and we will address those in about 10 minutes. So in just over 10 minutes time, we'll go through the Q&A. Before doing so, I wanted to provide a bit more of an introduction to myself. So I'm Has Diol, as Rohit had mentioned as well, and as well as being the co-chair of the London chapter of Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, I also started up a business about 3 years ago, and I now run that as a side business. So something that you touched upon, Rohit. And I think one preconception I had before starting my business, and I'm sure many people here have, is that starting something up is expensive. It requires a very large network. It's going to be very time intensive, and also that it's just a huge risk and it never quite feels like the right time. So we at Punjabi Chamber of Commerce wanted to provide you with some tools that you can take away and hopefully use to help reduce some of that risk. So we will talk you through a toolkit. And I think one of the things that actually complements what Rohit said quite nicely is, if we just put the slides back up, is that firstly, if you have a business idea and it's something that you don't have experience in, but it's something that you wake up and you have a burning desire to work in that field, then you should really test that idea. So I know somebody who, she wanted to start an interior design business, but she had no experience in interior design beyond her own kind of house. So she took pictures of her own property, she uploaded them to social media, had very good feedback, and then used that as an opportunity to test an interior design idea. So she asked people to send pictures of their home, and she would provide free advice of how she can decorate or where they can purchase items. She received good feedback, and that was mainly through questionnaires. So there are many forms of feedback you can seek, but we do recommend questionnaires as one of them. So you'll see here we've named a few. Typeform is a paid service. You can add photos, designs, logos, so it's a little bit more professional. If you want something free, you can use SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. But some people also just use social media. So there are things like Instagram or Facebook where you can put polls in place. And we do really encourage you, and I'm sure Rohit, you'll agree, to not just seek feedback from your friends and family, because often they're going to tell you what you want to hear. But if you go to your potential target customer, that's a great place to seek feedback. Another preconception I definitely had was, to build a website, I need a developer, or I need to learn to code, or you need to know somebody that knows how to code. But that's definitely not the case anymore. Here are just some examples of free website builders that you can use. The first four, Squarespace, Strikingly, LaunchRock, and Divi, can all be used to produce a website that would look like many others. And then you can also use Shopify, which is more for if you have products to sell. You don't even need a website in many cases as well. So you could use Instagram, eBay, or Amazon and have their marketplace where you can sell goods and services online. So there's a range of options there. There are also email templates that you can use for free, and that includes MailChimp, Ghost, Review, and Substack. I personally have used MailChimp very successfully. And then again, there was a preconception that to build a logo, you really need a developer, you need an external consultant, but there are actually many free tools that you can use as logo builders. Squarespace, Withump, and Canva are very good examples, and they're actually quite fun. If you have a creative side to you, it's a good opportunity to try a few ideas. It's very cheap, and it also means that you spend less time waiting to hear back from external parties. Moving to more of the structural and financial side of things, when you're setting up your business, you'll need to decide on the structure. And within the UK, you can choose from a few structures. The simplest one is sole tradership, and that's where you are self-employed, you're the sole owner, and you must complete an annual self-assessment. You don't have to do any annual sort of tax filings or anything else, but you should be aware that if you have a high earning business, it might be more tax efficient to set up a limited company. And a limited company is a privately managed business. It has the benefit of limited liability, so you're not personally liable for the business, but there are annual reporting and filing commitments that you must meet. You'll also be visible on Companies House, so some people don't always enjoy that. And if you're going into a business with another person, you have some choices that you can choose. You can set up a partnership. Again, you can have that as something that's unincorporated, where you just are both personally liable and you share the risks, costs, benefits, and responsibilities. Or you can set up a limited liability partnership. And that's similar to the limited company in that you'll have annual filings that you need to do. It could be more costly, but it's definitely more tax efficient if it's a high earning business. You'll definitely want to seek the advice of a business advisor or perhaps an accountant to suit these structures to your own personal tax needs. But to help with things like invoicing and annual accounts, there are some other free tools that we provide a list of here. So that includes Stripe, Xero, which I've personally used, QuickBooks, Wave, and FreshBooks. And this list is actually growing. So even if you go on Google and just Google free accounting or invoicing software, you'll find a wealth of materials online. Moving on to business accounts. So the reason we have provided this list is because there are different needs that people have when it comes to accounts. If you look at the first few on that list, Tide, Acorn, Revolut Business, you can actually set these up online very quickly. You'll have online access, you'll have an app that enables you within a few minutes to set something up. But then there are also the high street banks. For those that prefer to go into a branch, it may take a little bit longer to set up these accounts, but it would also mean that you can perhaps choose a bank where you have a personal account already. So at this point, you've got your website, you've tested your idea, you have a structure, a design, and you really want to plan what you want to do with your business in the next 5 years. So I definitely agree with what Rohit said in that a one-pager is definitely better than War and Peace. I think a lot of people can spend too much time writing up a business plan. But if you do want to write up a business plan, there are some tools that you can find online. On the government website, there's a link that we provide where you can write a business plan using their template. There's also the Prince's Trust, Version Startup, and Enterprise Nation that all provide free tools online. And these are very important for when you want to hire help or when you want to seek funding. You'll find that you'll probably need a business plan at that point. If we move on to the next slide, there are just a few more tools that we list here, including where can you hire help? So one thing I was very surprised about is how easily you can find help online by the hour. So you could go to People Per Hour, Fiverr, and there's actually another tool called Upwork, which we haven't listed here. And you can find people to help with your administrative tasks, research. You could have people call your customers, and you can pay them by the hour. Fiverr is actually a website where you actually do pay £5 an hour. It's very nifty and very handy in that sense. Moving on to social media. So there are some social media avenues here that are a great tool for free advertising, but it really does depend on your business, what you may want to use. I personally feel overwhelmed at times with the number of social media outlets that there are. So if you have perhaps something that's an aesthetic business like fashion or food or art, Instagram is definitely a great tool. Whereas if you have something like a personal training business where you need to form groups and you want to send sort of accountability groups online, Facebook is a great avenue for that. There are coaches, thought leaders who perhaps want to provide insights on a daily basis on what they're thinking. And Twitter is a great tool for that. You'll find many brides use Pinterest. So I would always suggest to anybody that has a wedding stationery business or any sort of wedding business to use Pinterest as maybe one of many social media tools. LinkedIn is always great for those that have professional services. So perhaps you have your own accountancy firm or your own law firm, and it's a great place to source clients. And then one other one we don't list here is actually Clubhouse, which has recently become a lot more popular. And on here, you can join and listen to topics or even speak about topics that you specialize in to gain a following. So at this point, your business begins to grow, you've got a social media following, you're advertising, and you feel like you want to inject some cash into the business. It definitely does not always have to be your own funding. Rohit is definitely a great source for this. And I think you said that if anyone has any funding questions, they can definitely reach out to you. We provide some examples here of where you can find funding, including friends and family. Loans from them is always a source that many people go to. There are also crowdfunding platforms, so Seeders, Kickstarter. There are angel investors, so people that are serial investors in small businesses where they feel like there is potential. And there are also venture capital funds where you can find these on LinkedIn, you can go on Telegram and try and find groups on there. There are also, at the moment especially, a number of government loans and bank loans that are specifically tailored to ethnic minorities. So we very much encourage you to go online and look at those. Now, when I spoke to Rohit a few weeks ago, we spoke about the importance of having support or having somebody that you can speak to. And I think you touched on that as well. So we definitely want to end our toolkit with courses and helpful websites that you can turn to. So you'll see here that we have two of the websites that Rohit has mentioned throughout his presentation. The first is the Business Troubleshooter, and the second is the Escape the Corporate Membership Program. So we encourage you to visit both of those. There's also a few other organizations that host events that can help you start a business or help you cover specific topics such as food or fashion or technology. And those include Escape the City, Out of Hours, Enterprise Nation, Version Startup. You can also go on Facebook and you'll be surprised if you typed, for example, food businesses in London. There are many groups that have people that have similar businesses that you can learn from. So we definitely recommend that. We also recommend university websites. If you go to the business section, you'll find that there are many links and tools and other people that are speaking on those websites, and you can find out more about that. And finally, we have LinkedIn courses listed, which is very good if you want to learn about a specific area for free, and you'll often find a lot of these pop up when you visit LinkedIn. And I think if we just flip over to the other slide. Oh, okay. I think it might be, never mind. I think the next one we just wanted to touch upon is, obviously, we hosted this event and we are very much a community that wants to unite Punjabis globally, especially those that have businesses and want to grow their business and have advertising. There's opportunities to advertise on the website. You can become a free member just by registering on the website at the bottom of the page. So with that, I will open the floor to questions. I think the first question is about the slides. Yes, we can circulate the slides, definitely. I have a few questions that have come to me privately as well, Rohit. So I'll just start the first one there.
Yep.
What was the biggest challenge when you left the corporate world?
Oh, good question. I think the biggest challenge is waking up and having to do it all yourself. Because actually, when you're in a corporate environment, you take so much for granted and you forget about it, right? So when I was sitting in a trading floor, if I needed a pitch deck, I would call up my comms people and say, send me a pitch deck. And they would send it over, right? Suddenly, I have a call with somebody and they say, yeah, so send us some outline on your business or your background. And you suddenly go, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, of course I will. Put the phone down and you go, oh, right, I got to do that as well, do I? So it's all of those things that you don't think about because actually you don't need to create them until they're asked for. And then all of a sudden there's a mad dash to do it. So I think that's one of them. The other thing I think is it comes back to that whole what motivates you and what can keep you driving forward. Because when you're employed, you go to work because you get paid to go to work, right? So whether you like it or you don't like it, you turn up because if you don't turn up, you won't get paid, right? So there's an inherent link there between them. But when you're working for yourself, it comes down to your own personal motivation and what drags you forward. And this is where you've got to deal with that overwhelm piece, right? Because actually there's so much you could be doing. And what am I prioritizing and where do I start? So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Another question has come in saying, you mentioned finding fellow entrepreneurs. For some who don't have a large network, what do you suggest as sources to source such networks?
So again, I think going back to what you were saying, there's a lot of communities out there that are entrepreneurial in nature. So whether you're on LinkedIn is not so great. The groups don't particularly work, but they do exist. Facebook groups, there's a lot of free groups that are out there that you can just join that will bring a community together, and you'll find people then through that. If you're fortunate to have an iPhone, then you can be on Clubhouse and you will find a community there quite easily as well of people. So those are just some of the ideas. Depending on your industry sector as well, you'll find people who are in that same industry sector. And I think you touched on it. So, food, I've got a food business as well, right? So I'm part of the food hub on Facebook, for example. So suddenly there's a whole wealth of information there and you could go in and ask a question and suddenly you're going to meet different people from that space. So similarly, depending on what your business is, go onto Facebook, look around, go onto Google, see what's going on. And, even they don't have to be the same people. They don't have to be from your same industry either. So there's a lot of local networking that takes place. And okay, yes, we're in a pandemic, but that still takes place via Zoom. So I run a local LinkedIn local event, for example, that brings local businesses together on a Monday evening at the end of the month. And we just meet and talk. Now, from that, you can then have relationships and you can then work with them. And, so there are a whole host of places that you could go and look for your community.
Okay. And is there something called a perfect time to start a business? And I think actually, Rohit, this goes back to a conversation you and I had where you had sort of mentioned it's a pandemic and many people are now afraid to take that leap.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, if I often joke, and I was on a call with a friend of mine today, and I said, I haven't spoken to him in 8 years, but we caught up this morning and he said, how's the business going? And I went, well, it's going okay, but it's not where I'd hoped it had been. But then I didn't factor in a pandemic as part of my thinking, right? So, is there a perfect time? I don't know if there's ever a perfect time. I think it comes down to you and where you are and what your idea is. And that whole having that side hustle and having a business on the side may be a way of doing it. I think when we spoke, I kind of said, well, if I was advising anybody who was employed currently, I would say keep your head down and keep getting your salary, right? Because at the moment it's a bit tough out there. However, there's no reason why you can't start planning what it is you want to do. So and you'd be surprised how many people don't write things down. and you kind of go, okay, so what's the business idea? And they kind of go, well, it's going to kind of be something like this, and it's in that sector, and it kind of has something to do with weddings. And you kind of go, okay, so who's your client? What are you going to do? And all of those kind of things, right? And so actually you want them to nail it down, right? So how do we nail that down, right? So it's like nailing jelly to the wall. Yeah, we can't nail jelly to the wall. So let's write something down, and then from there you can start building. So I don't think there's ever a perfect time, but I think you can certainly get yourself into a position where you feel more confident with it. And you're running a business on the side, for example. If you decided that that business was doing so well that it was now time to leap out of the corporate into that, you've already got an established business that's going, right? So that's a safer way of doing it. But you could be reckless and just be like me and jump out the plane.
Well, Bhavna actually said so me, so it sounds with a few people. We've had another question come in, which was about raising money for businesses. And I know, I spoke through a few tools there. Do you actually think you need a certain amount of capital to kick off with a business?
I think it depends on the business, right? So my business, for example, is a consultancy. So what do I need capital for? I'm not planning to, I can work from home. Yes, I've got a nice office behind me, but that's all fake, right? But so do you need capital? So if you've got a business that is capital intensive, like you need a kitchen, right? You're going to do a food business, you need equipment, or you're going to do a shop or whatever it is, then yeah, or you need to buy stock, then you're going to need capital, right? You're going to need, you may need machinery. I don't know what you're doing. So it depends on the business. So yes, you may need to, but if you're doing things on the knowledge side, a bit like what I'm doing, then actually, yeah, you need a bit of money to pay for memberships of various organizations, pay your accountant, pay for, the things that you talked about, right? I'm a limited company, so I've got filing obligations. I've got to register the company. I had a website. So there's all those costs that come out of it, but it's not like a huge pot of money that you require for that. But if you are, if you are designing something that has to be manufactured, you may need a lot of capital. But there are ways around it as well. There's a way of structuring things, that you don't, you can do drop shop for I think it's drop shipping, where you don't actually produce until the thing is ordered, correct? So that saves you in terms of having to commit and have warehouses full of dead stock. So there's a whole host of things that you could think about doing. On the fundraising side, yeah, again, it's like, think about how much money you actually need and then maybe double it as well, because raising money is hard work. And I think people underestimate how hard work it is. And actually, when you do go out to raise money, it can take over your job, right? It can actually replace what your business is, especially fundraising through the crowdfunding. It's exhausting. Having been through it, I probably will never go through it again, because the questions you get asked in a crowdfunding round are questions you wouldn't be asked if you were talking to a banker or to a VC or to things, because people really want to get into that. Not that there's a problem with that, but it's just, you have to be ready for that. So I think you had a list, right? So friends and family are probably your easiest low-hanging fruit, if you like, in that sense. And then you've got your crowdfunding, then you've got your angel investor. But again, angel investors come, when I speak to people who are looking for money, I say, well, what kind of money do you want? Do you want dumb money, or do you want money with value? Because if you want money with value, there are angels out there who want to give you their expertise as well as giving you their money, right? So they come as a mentor. Otherwise, there are other angel investors who just want to give you the money and then they want their money back, obviously, at some point. So it's not a one-way transaction.
It's very much looking at the overall value of where you're getting that money from. Definitely, I agree. And the drop shipping example that you gave, I actually know somebody who's in his first year of university, and he decided to start drop shipping online. So he started to order clothes from Alibaba and sold them straight to addresses, and only needed to pay for them when people placed orders. And he's actually made a significant sum of money that's paid off all of his university debt for the years he will be at university. So there really are endless opportunities. You're correct.
Yeah, I think nowadays as well, with the technology and the way things are moving so quickly, there are even more opportunities out there to do things that are not capital intensive, right? You don't need to have a physical shop anymore. right? People, unless they need to touch something, you know, like it's clothes or whatever. But beyond that, most things people are more comfortable, as long as you have a decent returns policy, then actually people are more comfortable doing it online. And the pandemic has moved us in that direction even quicker than where we were going previously.
Okay. So you also mentioned that there's kind of two ends to the spectrum. One, you've said, you know, you in one of your jobs, you automated many things. I think you used the term inherently lazy.
That's me. I'm inherently lazy. Yep.
But then at the same time, you have various projects that you're working on. You started a business with your wife as well. So how do you schedule your time when you're not working for somebody else? How do you keep yourself motivated or keep yourself also to have a mental break from everything?
Well, it's a really important point, and this is one of those key messages that people don't get. When you start a business, you become absorbed in the business. So where does that break come? So with me, I have to be very strict. Yeah. So if you think about, it's interesting that when the pandemic hit, a lot of people who were working from home lost their commute, right? Which we talked about. And the commute actually plays a role in demarcating home and work life, right? It's actually when you leave the house to go to work, you turn into work mode and you leave home behind. And there's a clear distinction. But when you work from home, there is no distinction, right? You don't even leave, you don't have to leave the house. And I was telling people at the time, you need to get out. You need to break the monotony of the day. So with me, it's very much about having structure. The food business side is my wife's business, but I help on the logistics. I help on, you know, we have a farmer's market coming up this Saturday and we've got food orders going out tomorrow. So tomorrow for me, Friday is a blocked out day. I am only doing her business for tomorrow. I know that at the weekend, I have my downtime with the kids because I need to have some sort of normality in the same way as others do. But having said that, if someone came up to me tonight and said, Rohit, I need to have a meeting at 12 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday because I'm in Dubai and it doesn't really matter what day of the week it is, I'd probably say that's fine. But I would then make sure that I schedule in the time around my life. So I have got time. This is the great thing, right? Because nobody's expecting me to be at my desk, I can sit there and say, okay, well, I've got an event, so I can clear my morning. I can go to school and do school drop up and pick up because my kids are quite young, right? And I can factor that into my working day, which I wouldn't be able to do had I been working in the city, for example, because I was, as I said, I left at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'd return at 9 o'clock at night. So would I see the children? No. Now I can, you know, maybe they don't want to see me, but that's a different matter.
Okay, so yeah, so there's definitely a level of freedom you get, although you still end up doing a lot of hours and it is hard work, as you mentioned.
And the motivation piece, I think, and I didn't answer that really, is about you. Yeah, you have to be able to pick yourself up. So what is going to pick yourself up? And that's where having a mentor, having a buddy, having somebody, I've got someone who's in Dubai. So him and I, we bounce ideas off each other, but also we pick each other up when we're not, you know, when it's feeling, because we all get there. There comes a point where you just go, it's just too hard, right? Why am I bothering hitting my head against a brick wall? This is just, you know, painful. And then you go, oh, shall I go back to the work in the city or shall I go back? And the city is always there. I left the city, right? And but having said that, as my friend told me, you won't be employable. So there's that. So you then go, could I get a job back in the city? Yes. Would I want it? And you remember all those things that I talked about, those, you know, the miserable people on the train, for example, is just one of those that just says, no, I don't want to go back to that. So what am I going to do now to motivate myself? And we live for our successes. So like I said, when you make your first sale, you get a boost. When you make your second sale, you get a boost. When you hire someone, you get a boost. I spoke to somebody earlier today who's just hired their first employee. That's amazing, right? Because actually that means that you're now moving forward and things are beginning to move in the direction you want.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, and we have 2 minutes remaining, I know, or maybe 1 minute. So we do have one question. I think we'll end on this question. I think it's quite a nice one, which is, where do you see yourself and your businesses going in the next 2 to 5 years?
Oh, good question. Yeah. And it's something I ask my clients a lot. So I don't often get asked it myself. The business troubleshooter, for me is going to be a global consultancy, as it already is, but it will be more than just me, because I still think there's a gap there. I am at the moment working on the model to make it scalable and then make it less reliant on me, so I can hire people or engage with consultants globally who can go in and do the same thing and use the same methodology to kind of approach businesses. With Escape the Corporate, similarly, I want to see how it goes. It's still in early stages and it's kind of co-creating from nothing, but we kind of want to build something much more powerful, and I want the members then to contribute to what happens next with that piece. But yeah, 2 to 3 years time or 3 to 5 years time, who knows? I'm thinking, we'll have a number of people working and we'll be out there helping a lot of businesses, because for me it's fundamentally about helping businesses, and if I can help businesses, then my mission here is done.
Thank you so much, Rohit. A great note to end on. And thank you to everybody for attending. If you do have any questions or want to connect with Rohit, please do so on LinkedIn, or drop us a message on LinkedIn as well, or on the website. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Have a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
And you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.